I will introduce the two speakers and be the moderator on the second panel of that morning. So first I would like to introduce Sam Stourdzé. But do I really need to introduce Sam Stourdzé? Everyone knows Sam Stourdzé. Sam is the, let's call him new director of the Musée de l'Élysée in Lausanne, Switzerland. He's also the chief editor of the magazine Else, which is a magazine directly connected to the Musée de l'Élysée. And the Musée de l'Élysée is a Swiss structure founded in 1985. And which is, with the Winterthur Photo Museum, one of the two biggest photo institutions in Switzerland. So prior to that, Sam has been very active, done many books and many exhibitions, so I won't list them all. I will just say that he curated shows and published books around on Tina Modotti, on Dorothea Lange. He has a special interest for the relationship between photography and film. He worked on Charlie Chaplin et les images, on Fellini, another exhibition and catalogue. And he recently curated or co-curated a show on the photo booth picture, Derrière le rideau, l'esthétique photomaton, which shows that he has a special interest for other images. And I think that's what he's going to talk to us about, because he's going to talk to us about his new collecting priorities or strategies.
Thank you, Cantine, for this presentation. And once again, sorry, I will speak to you in French. We have some excellent translators around that will translate my today talk. I just have changed the title also and expanded it a little bit from introducing exhibition as well into this new strategies. So it's now called De l'exposition à la collection pour un musée de la photographie comme caisse de résonance des pratiques contemporaines.
From exposition or exhibition to collection, the museum as the resonance box of modern practices. To start with, I asked a question: what it takes to be a museum of photography in modern life. Photography is ever present. It is present in musea of modern art, of ethnography, and artists are less and less subjected to any categorization, and they use the media as they stand. And photography finds itself hand in hand with painting, installations, performing arts. So why should we ask for the dedicated space for photography? When the Musée de l'Élysée decided to specialize in photography in 1985, the same question occurred to us: why should we need a museum of photography? And yet, back then, there was contradictory belief quite popular. Photography was not really defended by many institutions in Europe. In 1985, the very idea to create a museum that would be dedicated to photography was born out of struggle in which the very frames of Musée de l'Élysée was created. So this is the museum for photography rather than of photography. This is the borrowing from the German language. It goes without saying that the works of our predecessors, and our museum was founded by Chevreul. So the labors of our predecessors bore fruits. For many years, the Élysée Museum was one of the first in Europe and definitely the only one in Switzerland. And generations of amateurs believed that this was the point of reference in the ocean of photography. The museum decided to make certain shortcuts and selections presenting worldwide known masters and local masters. And finally, the Museum of Photography allowed photography to be fully presented in the exhibition space, and this is the role we acquired. What is the modern function of and role of a museum of photography? This is all about reinventing. Reinventing, this is the challenge that we need to face head on. If the museum is going to be founded on the basic question, what can we say about photography? Well, the answer is as follows. We have seen the development of photography from the object of documentation to the work of art, and once it has been considered to be the works of art, it should be now deconstructed. It acquired its nobility. Nobody would question the place of photography on the walls of various museums. Just the opposite. The history of photography is a discipline itself. Year in, year out, many scholars and researchers will research into various chapters of the history of photography as a jigsaw puzzle that needs to be fully completed. The classical history of photography is something that is already defined, but we have a new scholarly research approach right now, and we try to depart from the model that was borrowed from the history of arts, where it is the gesture and it is the model that is the most important definitive component. The art of the 20th century wanted to do away with the figure of the artist, and photography of the 20th century managed to set itself free from this assumption and create new masters and new benchmarks. This is the area of culture where works of art are available to everyone, even to amateurs, not only to connoisseurs. And in that sense, I would do agree with my friend, Mr. Cheval. Photography is not painting. It has its own history, and today it is even more clear to us than it is a distinct art in its own rights. What is interesting is how it correlates with other areas, with other arts. Photography not only as the history of art, not only as a history of showing works of art. What can it tell us? What can it tell us as a work of art? Not only in the history of aesthetics, as a visual, social, cultural, or technological history. Photography not as something to be contemplated, but photography embedded in the context of production and copying, reproduction. No little wonder that we speak less about images and more about pictures, motion pictures, copies, prints. So, redefining photography, we must also ask about means and ways of showing photographies. Looking at the new approaches to the history of photography, we can also see how new approaches to showing, to exhibiting photography started appearing. This exhibition is a suggestion which only proposes a point of view. Exhibition positions the viewer, the spectator, in the very in the very center of the sensation around. When in 2012 the Elysian Museum, together with Clément Chéry, organized this exhibition Derrière le rideau, behind the curtain, which was dedicated to the aesthetics that was hidden behind the curtain. We were not trying to present things in a chronological order, just very much the opposite. The point of departure was some technology in order to show the history of aesthetics. We were trying to indicate how amateurs and professionals were employing technologies available to them. If a machine is a machine, there may be a poetry of incident. And if together with photo atoms, photography reaches the last stage of its development, then photographer is disappearing. There is just a portrait. And if a strip of 4 shots is organizing us some time, then this is a narrative emerging out of individual shots.
De divertissement ou de contrôle identitaire.
Pattern is an everyday use device that is for our entertainment, but it also promotes enhanced research and exhibition. The space where photography, books, video, excerpts from films and other arts meet together. Photomaton allowed Andy Warhol's productions, which meet hand in hand with the textbook for workshops which repair cameras. So through the new approach to exhibition, we redefine means and ways of showing what we have to show. Since photographic image is going to be exhibited, printed out or projected, the Museum of Photography should be present in all the 3 technologies. Next to exhibitions, we organize 2 meetings. One is dedicated to the image that will be projected on the screen, and the other one, the image that will be printed on paper. The Night of Images is always organized on the last weekend of June. 7 images are presented out of doors in our garden area, where you can walk at night and you can enjoy art in the friendly atmosphere. So there are motion pictures, photographies, music, soundtracks, and trying to recap the spirit of the Night of Photography, something that was championed by our museum back in the 70s of the 20th century. I can tell you that in the presence of 60 artists, you can see short formats, short performances of 5 minutes or something, where artists speak about the intention behind the image that was projected on the screen. And the projection defines for us the time framework. The subject must be presented very succinctly in a few minutes' time, with the narrative must be very clearly defined from the beginning to the end, and the additional features include motion pictures, soundtrack, music. As for printed images, let me mention ELSE to you. ELSE, the magazine that we publish. In June 2011, the Elysian Museum decided to start publishing a magazine. This is the biannual ELSE. which represents quite a radical approach. This is the magazine for a different photography taken from an entirely different angle. Photography that is not only an end in itself, but is manifested through series, through collections, depending on the perception of an artist, a art critic or a collectioner. This is like the worship of a beautiful image. The history of photography is similar to the history of arts and the history of masterpieces. The question that we asked ourselves as we embarked on the publishing of Else was, what can we say about photography today? Is it all about aesthetics? No, it is not only about aesthetics. It is about ever-changing photography and our ever-changing perspective of photography. Here you see the one but last penultimate issue of Else, and you are invited to have a look at it after my presentation if you wish so. Now coming to the last part of my presentation, let me tell you about the collections, the resources that we have and the new strategies for heritage. Ever since we were established in 1985, the museum has been collecting photographies. In the span of several years, we managed to pull up a collection that was beforehand scattered through archives in other institutions, private owners, and this way we managed to acquire a collection of about 100,000 photographies. Back then, we were getting more of photographies as deposits rather than buying them. And now we don't know what the destinies of those photographies would be if it wasn't for the donation, for the entrusting them to the museum. At present, photographies are acquired and sold depending on the decreasing supply and increasing demand. There is a special niche market for photographies. There are photography dealers in Geneva in the 60s. There was the first ever European auction of photographies. At present, prices are really breathtaking. In the 1990s, it was quite surprising that an individual photography would be worth more than $100,000. Only Tina Modotti or Man Ray would be worth that much, whereas nowadays contemporary works by Prince Shem are also traded for manifold multipliers of the initial prices, like $4 million, which was Gurski's shot, $4,300,000. So probably we should not be complaining. Once photography has become an object of collection, it acquired a status of the object of desire. Its popularity is not only limited to auction rooms, it is also serving museums, exhibitions, publications, and if we have a deeper insight, we have some reasons to complain. Unfortunately, our budgets for purchases will never go as high as the most recent prices of the most famous photographies. And with inflation added upon it, the museum institutions have lost their purchasing power. A few years ago, museums were the saviors of photography. They were acquiring rich photographic collections, and they really served to preserve and uphold photographies. At present, photographies are sold at very high prices on individual auctions. And yet it is crucially important for our collections, for our resources to enrich. This is also in our mission statement of public service. because we need to conserve, research, and make available the photographic heritage among growing numbers of spectators. However, given our reduced budgets, well, we may only live with a meager budget that has been left to us. What can we afford? What can we not afford? Well, our room for maneuver was substantially narrowed because of our penury, and we may either look back to the past with a sigh of regret, or we may reinvent something new, and this is what we are doing. For a few years now, our museum has changed its purchasing strategy, focusing our purchases on the three axes. Such purchases that will allow us to complement or enhance a feature in our collection. In the second place, trying to bring back to the daylight certain meritorious personages in the Swiss photography over the last 2 centuries, and finally looking at modern Swiss and international photography and trying to issue to deliver some support, especially to young creators. We want to stand up for the young creators. And here we decided to narrow down the selection of our photographers to a very limited group of individuals, but this allows us to identify together with an artist to the most appropriate form of support, either acquisition of somebody's works of art and exhibition, or assisting young creators with their production so that young artists can preoccupy themselves with their new production. Our new acquisitions are related to the mission that we have, which look into the advancement of a young creator, young photographer, whose career we want to assist. Hand in hand with acquisitions and with purchases, we decided to use a value added that we have, and even if we find it quite difficult to operate on the modern photography market, we can use our expertise on conserving, researching, and using photographies available, also offering such services for private collectors. So while enhancing our human resource potential, we decided to attract amateurs and private collectors so that they select Élysée Museum as the one that would deposit safely their collections, their estates. Nowadays, we see that investing into our human resources and our equipment was a very sound decision to take. In 2007, Gilles Caron Foundation decided to use the services of the Élysée Museum in order to provide them the estate of 114 photographies. Also, the Chaplin family decided to deposit with us the photographic collection of Charlie Chaplin, 10,000 photographies altogether. In 2013, we are rolling out a new model for ourselves. We are establishing René Bully Foundation in Lausanne, and by signing a convention on deposits with a new foundation, within the new foundation, we allow the museum to acquire this estate, and in a few weeks' time we will announce publicly the acquisition of one of the biggest photographic collections that will enhance our operations on concerning books. So we will acquire a pool of books using our budget for purchases. And we do believe that libraries are also works of art, so they are eligible for such an expenditure. We want to be a pole of excellence, so we go for competence. And we try to undermine the standard approach to ownership. Should we own a work of art in order to have it in our collection, or is it sufficient for us to be the time-limited, time-barred guardian and holder of a work of art? Is it sufficient for us to have a right of showing works of art for a limited period of time? Or should we rather have works of art in our resources, but not being able to present them in any wider public? These are very provocative questions, and debate on this subject will be unfolding in the days to come. Many people believe that museums and museum collections should be proprietary. Sometimes we hear that collections were disposed of, were sold off. And a few years ago, indeed, we sold off some of our resources. Now we are rather thinking about safekeeping and being time-limited guardians of certain collections. And if so, are we allowed to conserve works of art if we cannot index them? So this is an open question, and such questions may seem obvious, but looking at what has always been the dilemma of keepers of art, these are very pertinent questions, and we could never acquire on proprietary rights the Chaplin collection. So what we negotiated was the long-term deposit arrangements, and thanks to the announcement of having this deposit, we could finance the new position of the art conserver. And the same is true of René Bury collection. Again, we use it as a deposit in the Elysian Museum. Beforehand, we didn't have any acquisition, we couldn't buy anything, but thanks to the monies released from restraining from purchasing other objects, we could find resources for conserving René Bury's collection. So in this perspective, the Elysian Museum charts out new directions in the management of museums and indicates a roadmap for decades to come. Coming to conclusion, I want to say that the museum in itself is like a resonance box of contemporary practices, of practices that we see in the world of art, but also in conservation of works of art, all creating collections. And this operation belongs to a wider tendency, a very dynamic tendency. Thank you.
Thank you for this very dynamic presentation, and thank you for staying within the 20 minutes.